Okay, as cultivated meat companies progress from proof of concept to scalable production, collaboration is becoming more than a buzzword, it's a necessity. So, three leading players in the space, growth media specialist Multus, cell line developer Roslin Technologies, and bioprocessing innovator The Cultured Hub, have come together to forge a new kind of cultivated meat ecosystem. To understand what it takes to make this cross-company model work in practice, and we're now going to speak with Kai, Ernst, and Yannick, each bringing a unique perspective to the shared infrastructure now taking shape. Gentlemen, shall we start with some introductions first? Kai?
Thanks, Nick. I'm Kai, co-founder and CEO of Multus. We're a company, as you said, that specializes in growth media. We help companies move faster from lab to market by designing formulations that perform better and cost less using our technology in robotic automation and machine learning. Good to be here.
And it's good to have you. Ernst?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. My name is Ernst. I'm the CEO of Roslin Technologies. We develop and commercialize cell lines for the cultivated meat industry. We focus on pluripotent stem cells for pork, beef, lamb, and soon to be salmon as well. And we make those cell lines available to companies across the globe.
And finally, Yannick.
Thank you, Nick. It's great to be here with you. My name is Yannick. I'm the CEO of the Cultured Hub. The Cultured Hub was started to really focus on the scale-up phase. So we enable companies with a full pilot facility offering scale-up as a service for companies across the sector creating cell-based products. And we do so without taking equity or IP from startups. So purely a service offering.
Well, it's great to have you all here. Let's start with a bit of context. Kai, why do you think the cultivated meat sector initially leans so heavily towards vertical integration? And what limitations has that model started to reveal as the industry matures?
The cultivated meat industry is just over 10 years old now. So when it started, it had the ambitions to transform the food system using biomanufacturing and to reimagine many of the technologies that have been inherited from the biopharmaceutical industry and use those to produce large-scale sustainable meat. Mm-hmm. What that required was reimagining really of all of those processes, from the cells to the cell culture media to the bioprocess to scaffolding technology. All of those parts of the production process needed to be re-engineered, redeveloped, and oriented towards the food industry. And at the time, those first companies didn't have any partners that could help them with that. What that's meant is that it's taken a very long time for those initial companies to develop their products, get them to market, and that's required a significant amount of capital as well. Mm-hmm. But right now, the industry is maturing, and that what that's meant is there are companies like us here that have emerged, specializing across those parts of the production puzzle, from cells on Roslin's side, media on our side, and bioprocessing on the Cultured Hub side. That means we have kind of dedicated and specific focus on those technology areas, meaning we can go far deeper than any one company could across those pieces and help companies move faster and build better products sooner. So that's our focus as enabling technologies in this industry, helping the companies accelerate from lab to market faster and cheaper.
Mm-hmm. And thinking about your decision to collaborate rather than build independently, Ernst, Yannick, what was the turning point that led you to pursue a partnership? Was it more about overcoming technical hurdles or managing cost pressures or tackling scale-up challenges?
Yeah, there were two drivers for us. One was product development and the other one was commercial. So first, product development, right? We are a cell line company and we provide these cell lines to customers across the globe. But before they take them on, they want to see some proof points that these cells can actually scale, grow fast, grow to high densities, etc. So some of that we can do in our lab. We do that at small scale, small bioreactors. But we want to demonstrate at that scale, we need to have a partner, typically a CDMO. That's why we reached out originally a couple of years ago to the Cultured Hub, submitted a grant application. We won that between Innovate UK and InnoSwiss, the Swiss funder. And that has been an incredibly successful partnership. We brought Multus in as well as our long-standing media partner, and that has been very successful. For a commercial perspective, there's something interesting as well. We had a couple of food companies that were using our cell lines to basically take the cell lines on and see if they could step into cultivated meat. However, they are more interested in biomass as a raw ingredient than in cell lines. Cell lines is too technical. They don't have the biotech capabilities. And that's something where between Multus, the Cultured Hub, and ourselves, we see an opportunity to bring that together and create that offering as well. So there's a direct commercial opportunity that this partnership can bring to the industry.
Yannick?
Yeah, maybe to add on to that, this is the type of collaboration where everyone can bring in their deep know-how and their expertise from their teams within their companies to the table and start collaborating on really developing this market and develop this technology where it can start creating an impact on people and planet. So for us, great to come together with Multus and with Roslin here to bring the right cell and the right media to a facility that can then actually process, create a robust bioprocess that functions, and then take this all the way to commercialized product and bring it to market a lot faster.
Now, working across companies is never simple, and the cultivated meat supply chain is anything but conventional. So what do you think are the most misunderstood aspects of building a deconstructed cultivated meat supply chain? Ernst?
You need to have incredibly good interfaces between the companies. Let me talk from our experience that starts with a technology transfer. We provide a very highly technical product to, in this case, the Cultured Hub, right? Then they need to work with that. It works in our lab. It works with my team. And in that respect, we are very experienced on how to grow these cells. But when you transfer those protocols, and on the receiving end, there's always something that pops up that you didn't expect. And it takes a lot of experience and a fair bit of trial and error to get it done well. We have done it now a couple of dozen times, and we see now it gets a much smoother and more simple process that is very easy on the receiving end to take on.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I think beyond those simple interfaces, technically, there needs to be good contractual relationships, communication, etc. as well to make it work.
Kai, did you have anything to add?
One thing I'll add is about selecting those partners in the first place. This industry is maturing, it is developing still. And that means there's a benefit to finding partners that are aligned with the industry's direction and challenges that it faces and are agile enough to flex and adapt to changes as they come about. So finding partners that you can work and collaborate deeply with, as Ernst said, with strong communication, good contractual agreements, good alignment of technologies. That's really important as well.
Mm-hmm. We'll move on to the technical foundations of the collaboration. How did you make sure that Roslin's cell lines and Multus's growth media and the Cultured Hub's bioprocessing setup would all work together seamlessly? Were there any surprises along the way? It's probably something all three of you could answer to. Ernst, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it comes down to two things. I think one is, again, that technical interface, doing a smooth technology transfer, getting that well under control. And we had the Cultured Hub being trained in our lab. We had teams from two of my colleagues from our side visiting the Cultured Hub to make that all a smooth process. And then also very clear approaches in terms of certificates of analysis, import and export processes, because that's not trivial if you start shipping biological materials across borders, even within Europe.
Yannick?
Maybe just add on to that, Nick, as well on that discussion. Collaborating, this means collaborating across teams in all different areas. So it doesn't become a purely technical and scientific exchange. It really becomes then also supply chain logistics, managing also additional external suppliers to make sure this entire chain functions and is effective and efficient on that side. So it's really important there to communicate strongly, to find the right partners that you align with, also on a longer term, to engage in these projects. And like Ernst already said, tech transfer is the absolute key. Making sure that the process is stable and operates in this new environment, in this new facility, and that both sides know how to work with the product.
Mm-hmm. And before I move on, Kai, did you have anything to add to that one?
I think just supporting that tech transfer with good documentation, seeking towards standardization as well, can really help in these processes, so that we can learn from each trial that we go through, each collaboration that we go through. We can refine and improve every time through communication and documentation.
Mm-hmm. Let's bring that to life a little. Are you able to walk me through a real world example, whether it be thawing cells or integrating media or running the bioprocessor, that shows how your work is interconnected?
Yeah, I can talk about that on high level as well. So us as a facility, as a CDMO in the space, as a scale-up partner, we deal with the cells from the first point of contact as soon as they're in the country and they come to our facility. We walk them in the door. They typically come in a frozen state. This is already with a lot of collaboration, a lot of communication in the background happening. Now, in this case, specifically also with Ernst and his team, to make sure those cells arrive on time, scheduled in the right quality, have the right certificates of analysis. Really making sure that that documentation piece there is strict. That also is a starting point for food safety. The second piece that also needs to be timely and arrived also within that framework then is the media. So making sure we have all components in the facility from the product side to be able to start the process. So that's even before we go into the facility in the labs, before we start working on a bioprocess. Then you have all the materials that you need. You need to make sure that you have all the different consumables in the facility. Then you're ready to start. The teams are aligned. You've got the know-how exchange. You've done a tech transfer. At that point in time, at least walk through it together from a theoretical standpoint. And then you bring, ideally, all the right partners to the table in the same room to do this first step. You thaw the cells, you bring it into the right environment, you bring the media to it, and you start working on the bioprocess. And that initial step, there's a lot of control in that environment to understand, to watch, to maintain, and oversee the process, making sure we hit the right requirements. From a facility standpoint, really making sure that the environment is sterile, is clean, is functioning from an equipment perspective in the way it should. And that way we can then work with the team from Kai and Ernst in this example to make sure we hit the right metrics, that we hit the right quality, and then we can then create a commercial, close to commercial product that is effective.
And Ernst?
Yeah, I think from a real life perspective, I think one of the challenges what I found and what I experienced is that the lead times are actually getting quite long. Let's take an example, right? If we would get today a request for a kilogram of biomass, right? That sounds like quite trivial. Let's produce it because it only takes 10 days technically to make it. But if you start thinking through the timelines, we need to then contact Yannick. Does he have availability in his facilities? Then if he has, then we need to order the media with Kai needs to pull that together, but he is dependent on supply timelines. Add to that some import-export processes in between with importation permits that may need to have to be obtained. You're quickly adding a couple of months, right? So when you work together, it's managing that supply chain end to end. And at this moment, this industry is not at a scale yet that we're all selling from inventory. So everything is, or most of it will be made to order. And that's a complexity we have to think through, and it impacts each of us in a different way.
Of course, bringing different systems together comes with its own set of challenges. What were some of the key hurdles in tech transfer between your teams, particularly around proprietary processes? And so how did you align your protocols without compromising IP and quality?
Let me take that one, Nick. So the beauty about the B2B business is, right, we are all in the business of sharing our know-how and expertise, right? So we already have, by definition, a different IP model. When we ship our cells only are as good as they are in the hands of our customers. So we need to hand over all the protocols, the know-how that you need to grow those cells. So that's a full technology transfer. Nothing is being hidden. What we keep for ourselves is the way how we make the cells, right? There's no need for the customer or the partner for us to know that, unless they have to go through certain regulatory steps, and we can disclose on a need-to-know basis. But fundamentally, as a B2B provider, we are in the business of sharing IP. So, of course, you want to get compensated and paid for that, but it's a fairly straightforward business model.
And Kai, from a media manufacturing point of view?
We make sure there are strict boundaries between the work our R&D team is doing on custom media development and the work our manufacturing team is doing for growth media production. As Ernst said, in that manufacturing process, we're offering a service, and complete transparency and strong communication is necessary for that. So we're sharing a lot of the details. We're being very transparent about our processes, any changes that happen, lead times, etc., so that we can make this collaboration effective.
I'm interested, how did you handle the logistics to make sure nothing was compromised in transport, especially given the sensitivity of both growth media and living cells?
Yeah, I can take that to start with. Our approach to logistics, I'd say, evolved a lot through this collaboration, being hands-on with temperature-sensitive shipments, with deadlines and cross-border logistics as well. Kind of quickly learning that we need specialized freight handling for these materials, and we spent a lot of time building a partner network for different providers so that we can have kind of consistency and reliability in our shipping.
Mhm.
One of the things as well on the supply chain, we need to bring those ingredients in. Often one of the longest steps in our process is just procuring the ingredients. So having again that kind of visibility on say Ernst's plans, so we can start proactively securing ingredients, building and maintaining strong partnerships ourselves in the supply chain of those ingredients, so that we can understand what lead times might be and have plan A, B, C for different ingredients, as well as in our case having the space and capacity to store and hold ingredients if necessary, so that we can keep stock ready for shipments in anticipation.
Mhm.
Maybe Nick, I can add just one sentence on this as well. This is where really experience starts adding in. You need a shipper, you need a receiver, and there's a whole piece in the middle that you give away a little bit, where you need partners and have a process that you've tested, you've controlled, you've checked, you've got the right documentation to make sure every point in this supply chain, the communication is also kept up and that all the parties are informed about what's going on, so that when a shipment does leave a facility, we know where it is at what point in time. With this, also the cold chain in place, and then knowing to receive the product at the right time on our side, that we know when it's coming, to make sure that the team is here, that we're ready to receive the product.
Mm-hmm. Timing's an important aspect, actually. How did you go about aligning your production capacity to make sure each handoff went smoothly? Did you have to rely on digital tools or planning systems to coordinate everything?
So I think each one of us, I'll speak from our side on the culture, we've got systems in place to manage our schedules through the planning. So we plan all the different slots in our schedules and our agendas, and then we start building from the facility point of view, what is being utilized, and at what point do I need to have what to be able to meet those timelines again. This is something where we need constant communication between all parties.
Yeah, I echo similar systems. We built a fantastic team here that manages our scheduling, making sure that we're bringing in ingredients, documenting them, storing them, knowing what's where and when, so that when we're ready to produce, we have everything ready to go.
Ernst?
Yes, there's a lot of trial and error and a lot of scar tissue being built up over time. I think that's the reality, and it's in principle, and that's a bit of a disadvantage of startups, right? A lot of those things you invent from scratch. And I came out of the livestock sector, where we did a lot of movement of live animals, and then you start to understand how these supply chains build up over time. And it is challenging. You learn quite quickly. You also grow quite quickly, and then it becomes all of a sudden you need to start building those systems, or at least good processes to get it done. And eventually we'll get there. But that is still something where, at least from our side, we can still continue to improve.
Mm. You're also working to vigorous standards. So how has your FSSC 22000 certification shaped the structure of the collaboration, particularly when it comes to traceability, compliance, and building trust with potential clients?
I can talk to this. So we have FSSC 22000 certification on our media manufacturing facility. That's a globally recognized food safe manufacturing quality management process. And that's really important because there are standards involved in that process that have been developed over many years in the food industry, and we're applying that now into the production of cultivated meat. And so that means maintaining a clean and monitored environment for producing our products, making sure there's very rigorous documentation and compliance with documentation across all the manufacturing process, batch records, ingredient records, etc., and taking a very risk-based approach to our quality control, so that we're assessing things not just that affect product quality, but that could also impact food safety as well. And that's a really important factor into the manufacturing process of cultivated meat.
Let's stay on the topic of consistency. How do you manage quality control in a decentralized but integrated system like this? Who's responsible at each stage, and how is documentation kept consistent?
Yeah, we are responsible in the end for the cells. So similar to Multus, we have ISO 22000 certification for our labs, where we make the cells, where we put all our efforts in. We work with standardized certificate of analysis specification sheets. So when we ship something, it comes all the quality control and quality assurance that needs to come with it to ensure that these cells are going to perform as we expect them to perform. So yeah, quite a bit of work is going in there. Of course, our cell lines also need to be food safe, similar like Kai's media needs to be food safe. We have done our analysis from a regulatory and food safety point of view to demonstrate they are. So our partners and customers can rely on that, and we share that type of information as needed.
What about on the bioprocess side, Yannick?
I'd love to add on this as well. Food safety is, you're speaking about one finished product in the end that goes out to consumers, and there's a whole chain of steps that need to happen on that journey. The first step for us that always comes in is whatever comes into the facility needs to be food safe already. So this is when it's very important that Kai and Ernst also have those certificates of analysis that we know exactly what's going in. And then you've got the facility itself that needs to be controlled, monitored, validated also from a process standpoint to ensure that the entire processing of this product is also done in a food safe space. So this is where standardizations like this and certifications make a lot of sense, because it means we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah.
And that means when the teams connect on these topics, they speak the same language to then bring the product to market. This also becomes very relevant as you go into the commercial space to also then make sure that the product that does go out and that is packaged and shipped out to consumers is safe.
If maybe also right in setting up these partnerships, there's a lot of learning that takes place. We can learn from Ernst and Yannick on aspects of processes that they use to maintain food safety and design product quality and integrate that into our processes as well. So this is a new industry that's being kind of forged, and these kind of collaborations massively accelerate that learning and standardization process.
Let's look through a regulatory lens now. How close do you think we are to having a system that's robust enough to meet regional food safety standards across the European Union, the USA, and Asia? Ernst?
That's a very good question, Nick. So I think let me cut it in two pieces, right? From a food safety perspective, I think we're very close, right? With the measures that we put in place between the three of us that we just discussed about the quality control on the media, the facilities, the ISO certifications, the cells, I we can produce biomass that is food safe. Now, that's not regulatory approved yet, because there's only a handful of countries where that has been done, and that is all public information. So given the fact that we've seen approvals in the United States, Singapore, and a couple of other geographies, we believe that we'll go further. It's fairly consistent, in my view, in what they would ask, their regional differences. But what I think is key, it would be very helpful if there's more harmonization across the different regions and geographies. But absent that, we'll get it done, and we work with cultivated meat producers, regulatory advisors, and doing our own homework to get there.
Mm-hmm. Ernst and Yannick, do you see this as a potential blueprint for other cultivated meat companies that want to move faster through the regulatory pipeline?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think it's a great blueprint to start working on how to bring products to market faster, because this is exactly how you start building speeds, building experience, building a robust process. I think robustness is very key here, making sure that from the tech transfer all the way through and all the documentation that required, the food safety, having the right cell lines, the right media composition to grow an effective product that's efficient. This is a good blueprint, and this is when you start building blueprints, when you start learning. And I think the learning comes by doing it. It comes through all the little mistakes that happen, all the alignments that you need to go through, and then build the documentation behind it. That can now be also moved into other areas and scaled and become a blueprint. And for us as a facility, this is where we focus as well, is really supporting companies in using such a blueprint, using this experience now to go to market faster.
Ernst?
An interesting one of course, there are cultivated meat companies that can use either of us or all of us, right? But a really interesting segment that I think is underrepresented so far in the industry is bigger food companies and meat companies. These food and meat companies, they would love to participate in the sector, but most of them have done that through passive investments in company. But they have a tremendous amount of knowledge downstream on food technology, marketing, consumer know-how, etc. If we want to bring that technology and that know-how into the sector, they need to have a starting point from where they can understand and take it on. And that is typically biomass, right? So if this team between Kai, Yannick, and Roslin Technologies, we have been able to have a well-oiled machine now to produce some of that biomass. And if a company is interested in getting access to that material to test what it is, to do some prototyping, tasting, etc., this is a unique opportunity to do that with very limited investment.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that helps us actually grow the sector as a whole, bringing these companies today, not just for their cash, but more for that technology that needs to come with it.
Mm-hmm. You're probably not going to mention any names, but what types of clients or partners do you envisage yourselves working with through this collaboration?
No, I think food companies, meat companies, food ingredient companies, everybody that has downstream know-how on how to make a good product. Because if I look at how cultivated meat can become commercially viable, there's two things need to happen. Cost needs to come down. Well, between Kai, Yannick, myself, and the rest of the cultivated meat industry and the startups, I think we have a really good plan on how to get there. But when you think about the second piece is how to get a product that the consumer wants to buy and then buy again, a lot of work is needed, and that's a completely unexplored area. I think the industry is just scratching the surface on that. Some really good work is being done, but there's much more potential. And that is where you can bring in these food ingredient companies, the meat and the food companies that have that technology. And honestly, whether that's like a large multinational or a family-owned business that is very passionate about the space, I think both can work.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really where, maybe Nick, to time on one point, sorry, is that you can expand this partnership a lot more now as you look at bringing more skills from the food side. You're looking at food scientists now, you're looking at creation of different food products for mouthfeel, for taste, for texture, for the whole supply chain of actually marketing these into supply chain. We're fortunate also in the Cultured Hub to work with 3 joint venture partners who are exactly at that industry level, and they can bring products to consumers. And now bringing that consumer lens into the cultivated meat industry, I think is a really important aspect now to start developing this industry further.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about funding for a moment, Yannick. How do you see this collaboration helping to de-risk things for investors, especially those who are wary of long timelines in deep tech?
That's a great question. I think, so far we've been working on small volumes, really good R&D, really great people involved who've got, the skills in bioprocessing. The next step is there's a lot of CapEx involved in actually scaling your production. Bringing your product that's robust to market and looking at the entire picture now from the upstream side of the cell lines of the media all the way to downstream of creating a food product. And I think something that exists now, especially in a collaboration like this, is we've lowered the barriers to entry. It means companies that want to move forward, that have a great prototype of a product, can move much faster. So the risk that is there of the unknowns, a lot of those unknowns have been touched on, have been solved, and there's learnings done now that can be shared with others.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that entire process now with the tech transfer can happen with less risk and more clarity also on timelines and financials needed to do so.
Mm-hmm. There's also a strategic dimension to consider. Could it help smaller players punch above their weight against more heavily funded competitors?
I can maybe start with this. I think absolutely there's probably 3 key benefits for those early stage companies now that have access to a more mature set, a more integrated set of partners in the supply chain. One is that point Yannick just said, CapEx. Some of these machines are very expensive. We've all invested in the capabilities to work with cells, media, and bioprocess. We've spent that CapEx. We can spread that across many companies. So companies can ultimately spend less money in product development and scale up. Second would be about that learning cycle. We've all accelerated our learning cycles by collaborating in this way. The faster you can learn and iterate and improve your processes, the more likely you are to get a successful product to market. Then I'd say the third one really is in the differentiation of these companies, the competitive advantage, being able to focus on what you do best, what really differentiates your company, and working with partners on those aspects that are table stakes to get a product to market. That's really beneficial for companies to move much quicker, be much leaner in this environment, and catch up with some of those first generation companies that started about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at Roslin Technologies, we are a small team, right? We have 25 people, and 20 of my colleagues, they are focused on the science. They wake up every single day thinking about cell lines and how to make that work in a cultivated meat system. And I don't know that for sure, right? But I think with 20 people in cell line development, we're probably one of the largest teams in the world that is just focused on that, even if you take large, well-funded cultivated meat companies into account. So that degree of specialism gives us opportunities to go faster, make cells that grow faster to higher densities, differentiate faster, etc. And we've seen that in parallel sectors like seeds for crops or livestock or genetics for livestock, where practically no farmer is doing their own seed business anymore or their own breeding. That's all outsourced to specialist players. Now, there's probably a graduation in the industry that need to go through to get to that same endpoint. But we believe there's a massive opportunity for specialist players like us.
Mm-hmm. Looking back over the collaboration so far, Ernst, what's been the biggest surprise for you, whether that was a technical challenge or maybe even an unexpectedly smooth breakthrough?
Ooh, that's a good one, Nick. I would say how quickly this actually can grow, because it starts with shipping a couple of cells and shipping a couple of bottles of media. And now we're doing larger scalable runs with the Culture Hub. And now that supply chain needs to kick in quite quickly. As we start expanding this relationship and are going to produce more, that needs to be quite well oiled, and we need to grow it very quickly to be able to meet the needs that we see coming.
And finally, looking ahead, could your model eventually serve as a plug-and-play infrastructure, enabling new cultivated meat players to commercialize faster without reinventing the wheel?
Yeah, Nick, I'd love to take that one. That's basically what the Culture Hub was built for. It's really to have this plug-and-play facility to bring in the best tech, to bring in the best people, the best products, and to help commercialize those products faster. Bringing new players in, but also existing players with new product development, and really just speeding up this entire process with a lot less CapEx involved in making it happen, and having the right skills at all the different teams to create good products. And when we speak about good food products, it's culture, it's experience, it's something that consumers need to experience for themselves. So I think we can do that a lot smoother and faster as a team, collaborating across the entire ecosystem and bringing the right players to the table.
And one last question for all three of you, actually. What advice would you give to other cultivated meat companies that want to build their own collaborative ecosystems?
I'd say start early, run those initial trials, begin the open communication with partners. In particular, find those partners that are aligned with the mission of the industry and are orienting themselves to be agile in the face of these changes and work with you through kind of maturity and scale up. So having an aligned partner and start those conversations early.
Ernst?
From my perspective, it's knowing truly where your strengths lie, right? If we look at the technology stack that's needed to make cultivated meat commercially viable, right? That technology stack, many different players in the world have a piece of that puzzle, right? That piece of the puzzle needs to come together. And it's, if you have maybe the best bioreactor technology, right? Why work with inferior cells, right? At least test, for example, in this case, our cells or our competitor cells, test it in your labs to see what is working best for you. But truly also, and potentially even think about making some of your technology available to others. Because as a sector, we need to go faster on that cost curve, and bringing some of the best technologies together, that can only happen through collaborations. And in that respect, I think the integrated model is a bit more challenged than the specialist model, recognizing that the specialist model comes with all the complexities that we discussed in this podcast.
Yannick?
Yeah, to round up, I can only support what Kai and Ernst said. I think it's critical to start having conversations early. It's an industry where we know each other, so it's, I think, really important to start building that trust, to speak together, and then to discuss openly, very specifically on how we can make it happen together. and how we can share the best know-how, the best tech to create these good products. But start early, open the conversation. I think for all three of us, I could say we're happy to be reached out to and to connect, to have that discussion.
It's been fantastic talking with you guys. I think it's a collaborative project that we should see more of in the industry. So we're looking forward to seeing some of the fruits of this in the upcoming months and years. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. It's been great talking with you.